They gave him a choice: stop asking questions or die. He chose death. Around 399 BC in Athens, Socrates stood trial. The charges: corrupting the youth, refusing to worship the city's gods. But the real crime was simpler. He taught people to think for themselves, to question everything, to not just accept what everyone else believed. And the people in power hated him for it, because when citizens start thinking independently, they stop being easy to control. So they put him on trial, gave him a chance to apologize, to stop teaching, to fall in line with the crowd. He refused. He'd rather die than stop thinking for himself, and that choice changed philosophy forever. Because Socrates proved that thinking for yourself isn't just valuable, it's worth dying for. Here's the problem with most people. They don't actually think. They repeat. They absorb whatever their parents taught them, whatever their friends believe, whatever their culture accepts, whatever's popular on social media, and they mistake this collection of borrowed opinions for their own thoughts. But it's not thinking. It's just echoing, and echoing makes you controllable, predictable, easy to manipulate. Socrates saw this everywhere in Athens. People who were absolutely certain about things they'd never questioned, who held strong opinions about justice, virtue, courage, and wisdom, without ever examining what those words actually meant, who followed the crowd's beliefs because it was easier than doing the hard work of thinking independently. And this wasn't just intellectual laziness, it was dangerous. Because crowds are often wrong, majorities can be foolish, popular opinion can be stupid or evil. And if you just go along with it because everyone else is, you become part of that stupidity or evil. You lose yourself. You become a copy of whatever's around you, instead of an actual individual. Socrates refused to do that. He questioned everything, including things everyone else accepted as obvious truth. And he taught his students to do the same. Not to be difficult, not to be contrarian, but to actually understand what they believed and why. To own their beliefs through examination instead of just inheriting them. This made him deeply unpopular. Because when you question people's beliefs, you threaten their identity. Most people build their sense of self on unexamined beliefs. Their religion, their politics, their cultural assumptions. And when you ask them to explain or defend those beliefs, they can't. They've never thought about it. They just believe it because everyone around them does. And that exposure is uncomfortable. It makes people feel stupid. Makes them realize they don't know what they thought they knew. So, instead of thanking Socrates for helping them think more clearly, they hated him for making them uncomfortable. The leaders especially hated him, because Socrates was teaching young people to question authority. To not just accept what they were told, to think critically about laws, about traditions, about power structures. And that's dangerous to anyone who benefits from people not thinking. So they brought him to trial. The charges were vague: impiety, corruption, but everyone knew what they really meant. Socrates, you're making people think, and we need them to obey. So stop, or we'll kill you. And here's where Socrates showed his true character. He could have apologized, could have promised to stop teaching, could have left Athens. But he didn't. Instead, he defended himself by doubling down. He told the court that his mission was given to him by the gods, that Athens needed him to keep questioning, that an unexamined life isn't worth living, and that he'd never stop doing what he believed was right, even if they sentenced him to death. They did, and he accepted it calmly. His friends arranged an escape. He refused. He spent his whole life teaching that you should do what is right, even when it is hard, even when everyone opposes you. even when it costs you everything. He couldn't abandon that principle now just to save his own life. That would make everything he taught meaningless. So he drank the poison, surrounded by his students. And his final words weren't about fear or regret. They were about paying a debt and taking care of details. Because he'd lived according to his principles, and he was dying according to them too. That's integrity. That's what thinking for yourself actually costs sometimes. Now let's talk about why this matters for you. Because you're probably not thinking for yourself either. You think you are. Everyone does. But test it. Pick a belief you hold strongly. Something political, religious, social. Now ask yourself, why do I believe this? Did I come to this conclusion through my own examination, or did I absorb it from my environment? Most people can't answer that honestly, because most beliefs are inherited, not chosen. You believe what your parents believed, what your friends believe, what your social media bubble reinforces. You've never actually questioned it, never examined the other side seriously, never tested it against reality. You just accepted it because everyone around you did. That's not thinking for yourself. That's being programmed. And Socrates would say that's not really living. You're just a copy, a reflection of whatever environment you happened to grow up in. Not an actual independent thinker. So how do you start thinking for yourself? First, question your beliefs. All of them, especially the ones you're most certain about. Because certainty without examination is just arrogance. Ask yourself, what evidence supports this? What evidence contradicts it? Could I be wrong? What would change my mind? If you can't answer these, you don't actually understand your own belief. Second, seek out opposing views. Not to argue, to understand. Most people only consume information that confirms what they already believe. That's not thinking. That's confirmation bias. Real thinking requires engaging with ideas that challenge you, that make you uncomfortable, that force you to defend or reconsider your position. Third, be willing to change your mind. This is the hardest part. Because changing your mind feels like losing, like admitting you were wrong. But Socrates would say that's exactly backwards. Changing your mind when presented with better evidence or arguments is winning. That's growth. That's learning. Stubbornly holding on to wrong beliefs just to avoid admitting error is what's actually losing. Fourth, stand alone when necessary. Sometimes thinking for yourself means disagreeing with everyone around you, your family, your friends, your community. And that's lonely, that's scary. But Socrates showed that it's necessary. Because truth doesn't care about popularity. And if you abandon your own judgment just to fit in, you've lost yourself. Think about the areas where you just go along with the crowd. At work, in your social circle, in your family. Where are you pretending to agree because it's easier than thinking independently? Where are you silencing your own questions because you don't want to rock the boat? Those are the exact places Socrates would tell you to start thinking for yourself. Here's what most people don't understand. Thinking for yourself doesn't mean being contrarian. It doesn't mean disagreeing just to be different. It means doing the hard work of examining beliefs, yours and others, and forming your own conclusions based on reason and evidence. Sometimes you'll agree with the crowd, sometimes you won't, but either way, it's your conclusion, not a borrowed opinion. Socrates also taught that you have to be willing to say, I don't know. Most people would rather pretend they know than admit ignorance. But Socrates said admitting you don't know is the beginning of wisdom. Because once you admit ignorance, you can start learning. But if you pretend to know, you stay stuck in false certainty. How many things are you pretending to have figured out? Politics, religion, how to live, what matters? If you're honest, you don't have most of it figured out. None of us do. But admitting that is uncomfortable. So we pretend. We adopt some ideology or belief system and act like we have all the answers. That's not thinking for yourself. That's hiding from the work of actually figuring things out. The modern world makes this worse. Social media creates echo chambers. Algorithms show you what you already agree with. Everyone performs certainty even when they're confused. And thinking for yourself has never been harder, because it's never been easier to just blend into whatever tribe accepts you. But Socrates is telling you that's not enough. That's not living. That's existing as someone else's idea of who you should be. Real living requires thinking, questioning, examining, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's lonely, even when it costs you. Socrates died rather than stop thinking for himself. You probably won't face that choice. But you face smaller versions every day. Will you speak up when you disagree? Will you question the narrative everyone accepts? Will you examine your own beliefs honestly? Will you change your mind when you're wrong? Will you stand alone if necessary? Those choices determine whether you're actually thinking or just echoing, whether you're living your life or performing someone else's, whether you're an individual or just a copy of your environment. Socrates chose to think, even when it killed him, because he believed that a life spent echoing others isn't worth living. That real human dignity comes from using your mind. That the examined life is the only one worth living. The question is, are you brave enough to think for yourself, or will you keep echoing whatever's popular, whatever's safe, whatever keeps you accepted? Because those are your only options. Think or echo. There's no middle ground. Socrates chose thinking and changed the world. What will you choose? Subscribe for more uncomfortable truths.